Hi, everyone around the world. I've got chocolate with me tonight. They seem to play off with each other. And from Earth to outer space and to the Pentagon. From Earth to outer space and to the Pentagon. This week has already brought us another beautiful crop circle from England, discovered on June 8th at Barton Stacey Belt near South Wonston, Hampshire. 12 points, 9 circles, about 180 feet in diameter. From that 12-pointed crop circle to another mysterious geometry, this is rotating out in the asteroid belt. It's called Ryugu. Remember, 2 years ago in 2019, Japan's spacecraft Hayabusa 2 captured samples from the surface of this diamond-shaped Ryugu asteroid. It's about 2,800 feet wide and returned the samples back to Earth in December 2020. Now, the Japanese scientists are reporting, quote, boulders on asteroid Ryugu are surprisingly fluffy, close quote. Japanese scientists have discovered that rocks from Ryugu could be more than 70% empty space, almost like styrofoam, which is about as porous as icy comets. That empty fluffiness provokes the scientists to suggest that one possible origin for the extremely fluffy rocks is that they formed almost after the most ancient cosmic impacts in this solar system. So the Ryugu rocks could be remnants from the earliest beginning of this solar system. The Pentagon has been taunting us in the 180-day countdown with what I think are phony deflections, asserting that UAPs are definitely not United States technology, while coyly saying there is no evidence they are not alien technologies either. Meanwhile, thousands of people around this planet since at least the Betty and Barney Hill, New Hampshire human abduction case in 1961 have described encounters with non-human entities, most commonly gray-skinned beings with big black eyes that are probably lenses. I first heard about the gray-skinned beings with large black eyes or black lenses over sometimes described reptilian eyes that had vertical pupils. And that was when I was producing the documentary film A Strange Harvest for the CBS station in Denver from September of 1979 until its broadcast, the original broadcast, in an evening 90-minute special on May 25th, 1980. And in that documentary, I had a woman, a human abductee in the UFO phenomena, who described seeing a calf raised from a pasture outside of Houston, Texas. And it was in May of 1973, a long time ago, that this occurred. And what you are going to hear her describe in her own words is seeing that calf rise in a pale yellow beam of light.
It's like a spotlight that's shining down on the back of my car. And it's like it has substance to it. I can see an animal being taken up in this. I can see it squirming and trying to get free.
How's it being cut up?
Dissected.
Mm-hmm. With knives?
Instruments of some kind. There's tissue. It's laid out, flat and smooth. It glistens. And the needles, there's needles in it, or what appears to be like needles. It may be probes, I don't know. But it has a tube connected to it. And the same thing with what appears to be testicles.
Is anybody else around you?
Okay, they have very large eyes. They're very hypnotic. Like they're so big that, and they don't blink. Their eyes do not blink. It's almost like, I guess, a snake. They were very snappy about their movements, and they knew exactly what they were doing.
For that documentary, I worked with Dr. Leo Sprinkle, Director of Counseling and Testing at the University of Wyoming in Laramie, and he is the one who hypnotized Judy. The gray being communicated with Judy telepathically, and as she watched that calf go up in that pale beam of yellow light into a UFO, under the hypnosis, she did describe a gray being with snake eyes that used a cutting instrument to slice these thin tissue sections from the calf's testicles. After that May 25th, 1980 broadcast, I was asked to speak about animal mutilations at conferences and in television and radio broadcasts. And that's when I met Bud Hopkins, a New York City internationally acclaimed artist who wrote a 1981 book entitled Missing Time. Bud interviewed many people who reported seeing UFOs in the sky or strange beings in their bedrooms. Then the experiencer suddenly realized the clock that had shown 11 p.m. now says 3 a.m., and they have no idea what happened in the missing 4 hours. Bud reported, quote, "If there is anything that links these people to one another, it is that all of them are deeply perplexed and troubled by the time lapse or amnesia. They feel something strange or weird has occurred, but until they go under hypnosis, their memory fails them," close quote. 6 years later, in 1987, Bud Hopkins released another book entitled Intruders, The Incredible Visitations at Copley Woods. The book evolved from a letter Bud received and investigated from a woman he called Kathy Davis. After reporting a terrifying UFO experience to Bud Hopkins, Kathy's life took a dramatic turn and she became the central figure in Bud's next book, Intruders, and in the TV series adapted from that book. But tonight, I can use her real name, Debbie Jordan Cobble, now 62 years old, who has written her own book, Extraordinary Contact, Life Beyond Intruders, published and soon to be released by the UK's August Night Press. Here, for the first time in her own real name, Bud's Kathy Davis writes from her own 62-year life of interactions with other intelligences. Debbie's book spans at least 5 decades, from the 1960s to the 2010s, with honest, heart and mind-wrenching details about what it means to be a lifelong experiencer of human abductions by other intelligences of unknown origin and unknown intent. The UK publisher and distributor is August Night Press, in association with White Crow Books. And Debbie would welcome hearing from you after you've read her important new book, Extraordinary Contact. And her Debbie Jordan Cobble website is www.debshome.com. And that will be repeated in the notes under this broadcast, the publishers and how to get in touch with Debbie through her website. In your book, Chapter 6, it is titled, It Gets Weirder. And you begin, you begin on April 24th, 1984. You would have been 25 years old then. Quote, I had the most unusual UFO sighting of my life, close quote. You were starting out with a manicure.
Yes. I did the weirdest stuff at the weirdest times of day and night. I have no internal clock, and I just function whenever. And I'm like, it's later in the evening, and all of a sudden I realize, I got to have like nail polish remover, some weird stuff like that. So I go in my car, and on the way home, I see this light in the sky. I saw this bright light coming real slow, and then it like went into two lights, like headlights, but in the sky really low. And I hurried home. I ran in the house and screamed at my mom, come out here, you got to see this. I know my mom and I ended up back out on the front porch. This thing was coming over the house, and it was freaking huge. Mom's house was surrounded by trees, but there was open sky above. And this thing was so big that it like almost filled up the whole open sky, and it was very low, but there was zero noise. This thing made no sound whatsoever. When it got right over the house, Mom and me standing on the front porch looking up, you could almost hear it when the lights came on the bottom. It was like, whoop, like that, like air shifted. And all these lights lit up underneath of it, bright lights. I remember a red light up near the front. And there was so much light that it obscured being able to see the silhouette of it once the lights came on. And I looked over at my mom, and my mom was mesmerized, standing there with her head cocked straight up and her mouth hanging open. Oh, my God, that's so beautiful. I'm like, what? And I was freaking out because I kept thinking, oh, my God, they're coming. They're coming to get me. Oh, my God. As if gliding silently over the house, I ran through the house, out the back kitchen door to the back porch as it was gliding over the back porch. Once it got past our house, the lights went off on the bottom, and it was dark again. But I could still see it kind of went over a little bit south of the house, and then it just flipped. Instead of making like a big aircraft would make a banking turn, this thing just like rotated on its freaking axis and flipped and just started going in the opposite direction. Dead silent. Not ever a sound. I can't remember if I called Bud or not, but I know I was freaked out. And I thought, oh, my God, this has got to be all over the news. Mom, hurry up and turn on the radio. Turn on the TV. Somebody's got to be seeing this. This is insane. So big and so low. And Mom and Dad didn't live that far from the city in Indianapolis. Millions of people. Not a word. And the next day, nothing in the paper. How in the hell is that even possible?
Right.
Later, we drew pictures. Somehow Bud got a hold of Dr. Heineck up in Chicago.
Yeah.
Mom and I spoke to him on the phone. Super nice dude. And he had me and Mom draw pictures of what we'd seen that night. Mom really felt that he was beginning to feel like that not everyone was able to see these things.
That's right. I would agree. And how does that work? Is it that they are controlling the human minds? Are they controlling 10,000 human minds and allowing only one or two to see at the time that they are generating this image?
Maybe they shut off everybody in the general vicinity, but the few of us that had already been turned on, for lack of a better way to put it, already have the extra circuitry to see it,
Yeah. As I was reading the book, I kept thinking, orb lights. You are always seeing orb lights that throughout your life, these little orb lights are what seem to anticipate experiences that you have.
Yeah, sometimes I've seen them in the house, and other people have seen them in the house, and I don't think anything happened after that. Like those little blue balls of light have whizzed through our house. I had one whiz through my car at an intersection one night. We've had little white balls of light that have drifted through the house and the front yard. In 83, it was a bigger ball of light. It was more about the size of a basketball. I tend to think at least in most cases for myself, I almost feel like those balls of light are consciousness of some kind, or some kind of an energetic being, actual life form, not just a ball of electricity or static. And I felt sometimes I almost got the distinct feeling that they were either checking on me, making sure I was okay, or doing something that I don't understand or know what they're doing regarding me. So I've always felt protected in a way, and I've always felt like whoever I've been having interactions with, it has been mostly the Greys, but there have been some human-looking people as well. I feel almost a familial, I feel related to them in some way. The impression I get from them is that they know me. I don't remember them, but they know me. They've known me my whole life. And maybe then some, I don't know. Just the feeling I've always gotten.
There is a growing sense among people who are military whistleblowers and others who seem to have insights about the Greys, the Blondes, the Reptilians, and on, that the Greys cannot be trusted and that they will act friendly or neutral and sometimes help humans, but that they lie. Are the lies for something positive for humans or not is a question that has been raised, leaving me in 2021 wondering what you, as a longtime interactor with Greys and occasionally the blonde being, what your sense is of their motives of interacting with us. Are they even from inside this universe? And if they are from outside in another universe, another dimension, or a timeline, what is it that they want from Earth, from humans, and would you trust them?
There is a part of me that feels, the ones I've had contact with, there's a possibility that they're from our future and they are us. That's just a real strong feeling I've had for many years. I feel strongly that they are our future and they are us. And as far as they lie, so far I have not had any reason to think that. On the other hand, my government and my military have lied to me plenty. So I say, ain't that the pot calling the kettle black? And people have said, why don't you ask them this? Why didn't you do this? Why didn't you grab this? First of all, in the beginning, especially just the visualization of them, just seeing them is shocking. Your mind kind of stops, like you're frozen. And the last thing that you think about is having an intelligent conversation with this thing. Because all I could think about for the longest time was, please don't touch me. Please don't kill me, please.
Right.
And then I think to myself, if they're so far advanced from me, it's like, why would I go to the zoo and have some existential conversation with the chimpanzee? He's not going to understand what I'm saying,
Right. What do you experience in telepathic communication with the Greys?
I don't ever remember seeing people's mouths move. I heard voices, and there are times when I wouldn't even see anybody, but I would hear the disembodied voice, always this voice. You have a voice in your head that talks to you, your voice, but I didn't see where it came from. I didn't see the person. But then when I was at the place, wherever it was I was at, and I saw that child for the first time, and that gray thing was talking to me, it was more of like he was thinking to me, and it was up to me to find my words to convey to me what he was thinking to me. It's so hard to tell somebody that hasn't experienced it.
People who have worked in intelligence in the military have told me that they understand that at least the Greys communicate directly with the human language center in the brain telepathically.
I understand the words, you know what I mean? They're just my words.
Like your own thought voice, but it's not you generating the thought voice.
Right. And then one time, I remember looking at that gray thing, and it was like I got hit with an emotion bomb. I quickly realized that this wasn't coming from me. I think he was trying to pull from me all of my human emotions and trying to give me something back, but didn't know which one to give me, so just threw them all at me in this big bomb. You know what I mean? I'm like, what the hell?
Is this the one that is like a black turtleneck?
Yes.
Well, the government certainly seems to think that most of the grays are artificial intelligence, leaving the question, who and where are the progenitors that made the grays?
I think this is just my opinion, based on, again, experiences and things I've seen. The more human-looking ones, the grays were the first contact that I remember having. But as I got older, I had contact with lots of strange-looking people, but they looked kind of human, mostly human. Some were gorgeous, beautiful, blondes, and then there were the people with the black hair and the dark, dark eyes and the pale skin. I mean, you could walk past one at Walmart and probably not even look twice.
And do you think that the blonde Nordics and possibly a lot of hybrids are walking among us right now in 2021?
Yes, I do. And I've even tried experimenting a few times to, like, I'll see somebody that looks interesting and I'll try to, like, speak to them telepathically, you know, and say just something like, hey, you hear me? And a couple times in my life, people have actually turned and looked at me and smiled, and it kind of freaked me out a little bit, so I just kept on moving. But I'm just so aware now. There's so much more to it, and it's exciting. It doesn't frighten me at all.
What do you think is the relationship between the cycling that has been named reincarnation on this planet? The recycling of souls is the machinery of this universe. Why is that so important to the grays and the non-humans?
When I was a young little child, I had that dream that the sun exploded as I watched, and a billion, infinite number of little light shards came off of it, and I was told that each of us is a little shard of that light, and we go and have this experience somewhere, this planet, some other universe, some other planets, some other life form, a tree or an animal, and when you're finished and your vessel can no longer contain your energy, you leave. And you can either go back to where you came from and you take all of the experiences and everything you felt or saw or did with you back and lifts everyone in knowledge in the cycle of this continuous, everlasting life that we're in.
And isn't that vessel that is gathering information in organic life and then delivering it somewhere, isn't that the soul?
Yeah. I think human beings are fantastic, energetic beings. I don't think people remember what they really are. I think that these experiences I had was to remind me of what I am so that I can remind what you are.
Right.
You know? And hopefully steer away from the negative stuff.
The negative. You could say that a metaphor for this universe has been drawn in the Oriental practices for so long, and it's called the yin and yang symbol. Why do you think that the black and the white and the black, the juxtaposition of dark and light, and hate and love, and death and life are seemingly so close in this universe?
You would never recognize one without the other. If you didn't have hate, if you didn't have negative and were only all positive, and then negative came upon you, you wouldn't recognize it for what it was. So you can't have one without the other. You can't know love without hate. You can't know peace without pain.
But why doesn't light instantaneously, immediately, always vanquish the dark, the evil, the black?
Well, like I said, you can't have one without the other.
But wouldn't it seem logical that the light is more powerful and that the light would automatically extinguish the dark, and that it leaves this haunting question for me always? Why are we in a universe in which the dark seems to be next to the light instead of vanquished?
I don't know. all I'm seeing in my head is a dark room. And I walk into a dark room and I turn on the light. The dark is gone. Now the light is here. When I turn the light off, the dark comes back. In darkness, there's growth and experience. Some of the worst times in my life, the darkest times in my life, I have come through the other side of it brighter and more elevated, and I would never have reached that height had I not been at that depth. But I made it through that other side better and stronger and more spiritual than ever before.
I met dear Debbie at Bud Hopkins' apartment in New York City in the early 1980s. I met Debbie at Bud Hopkins' apartment in New York City and have always loved her spirit, intelligence, honesty, and the fascinating discussions we had with Bud Hopkins in the middle of us here on one of our fun discussions. And we talked about everything, about abductions, animal mutilations, and what is our true relationship with this universe. And this past weekend, at the post office, I found an extraordinary letter from a writer who describes himself as a physicist working in one of our large divisions in the United States. And he said in his letter that he was working in what is called a JSOC project, the Joint Special Operations Command. It has trained since 1980 to execute special operations and missions worldwide. JSOC is located at Pope Field in Fort Bragg, North Carolina. He began this letter this way, quote, "I will try to explain what little I do know about the others," meaning alien intelligences interacting with Earth. The term others is used in some of the research reports that I have to go over in my job. This is how JSOC refers to them, and always in quotation marks, which I find odd. Anyway, the ashy gray small child size, the grays, are biologically alive. They have been described in the JSOC reports as a nuisance to operations and project goals, a nuisance. They are described as being designed for temporal space travel, which is a type of travel we currently cannot do as humans. They are grown, meaning the gray biologies. They are grown, for lack of better words, which I think means genetically manipulated and controlled, and probably they are cloned, and programmed for specific duties and mission assignments, just like our human pilots. The ones that manage this bunch are the much taller grays. This is a very old race that do not travel through space often. They use these smaller worker drones to do that for them. And those tall ones that are being referenced could be the ones that some of us have been exposed to in doing research when people say they have been introduced to an emerther, E-M-E-R-T-H-E-R, tall gray, that is supposed to be friendly or neutral. Notice the term that I use, that this is a very old race that do not travel through space often. They notice the term through space and not in space. This is the goal of the larger engineering program I am involved with. And what he's beginning to imply is point-to-point travel, that is not having to go through Euclidean straight lines to get someplace. When they, still referring to these gray described beings here, when they travel through space-time, it goes to a zero function of the waveform. It means that you can literally travel instantaneously to any point in the universe in the blink of an eye. And this is the holy grail that JSOC wants at any cost, and I do mean at any cost. We understand some of it, but it uses concepts that are difficult to grasp and use current physics the way we understand at this point in time. There is an aspect of consciousness to this that we are just beginning to use and tinker with. This has to do with your questions about a projected reality when I have talked about this being a holographic universe. A projected reality from somewhere else into an existence that you and I experience every day. I will tell you this. It is a scientific fact that when we map the background microwave radiation of the universe, the very axis of it runs dead center through the ecliptic of our solar system. It seems as if the universe was built around us, or rather the solar system we exist in. This is and brings up a multitude of questions both in theology and scientific academics. What I can tell you is that there is much proof to show from actual experiments that conscious intent plays a big part in the formation of the results of experiments or exercises. We are just now able to understand that space, or rather space-time, does not exist in the conventional sense. It is a construct of the consciousness field. If we did not exist to observe it, it would not be. As far as light versus dark, hate versus love that you ask about, those are human concepts impressed upon this field, this consciousness field. The field is there to become or be what we think with conscious intent. It reacts to our collective intent, implying that prayer is a physics in this universe, a quantum universe, where the physics of intent and mind to universe concentration can communicate. This consciousness or conscious science is known and highly developed by our non-human friends, to the point that it seems like magic. But I assure you, it is real science and not magic. There is only the self, he put that in quotes, while you are here, in quotes. If you could understand that truly you exist as part of this consciousness universal field, and that you are only the conscious intent that is you, just know that the human race is moving on an evolutionary scale very quickly to understanding the phenomena of higher dimensions and a conscious universe, and that the two are inseparable. The universe that we know as matter and the quantum field and the consciousness behind it, the two are inseparable and dependent upon the intent of the frequencies in varying strengths that interact. This is so much like some of Bohm's work and others. And it seems to me that what I'm sharing with you tonight is going to be the growing area of breakthrough after breakthrough after breakthrough. And that whatever we are, whoever manipulated DNA to create us. It is some sort of a vast experiment, perhaps having to do with consciousness in organic life. And that is the challenge of this universe, and that the yin and the yang symbol, as old as that symbol is, boils down everything I keep learning. But just like I truly ask Debbie, I do not understand why the light does not vanquish darkness instantly. I welcome any input from you all. I'm outside of isms. I want this to be heard tonight and your dialogue as trying to move into what appears to me to be increasing information coming to me about the true nature of consciousness as it works in this particular universe. And that outside of this universe, there could be another huge universe that is projecting this and on and on. So don't think in classic and ancient isms. Let's have dialogues now with each other about a whole new way to look at how our brains, our consciousness, and our souls interface with this universe that we are in, on this planet, which may have other planets, even within 50 light years, that are somewhat similar and is exactly the same kind of consciousness experiment happening there or different. As Debbie said, I find this to be a fascinating time. And the more that we can dialogue with each other about what we know, from those of you who are in agencies where you do have information and can share as much as you can, and for those of you who might be in the abduction category, if any of this is really ringing true with you, let me know. And Ian, I'm going to transition over to you.
Well, first of all, I'd like to say thank you to the generous viewers in the super chat this evening, starting with Moonbird.
Hi, Moonbird. Hello.
Then James Thiessen, Liz Gasperi, Courtney C., Deborah McGavin, Joan Orshi, Teresa Bass, Joanna Cooks, and Bailey, I think, Jeffrey Rizzo, Bell Horse, Sarah Milagro, Fernando Menezes, Schoolcraft, Pandora, Mary Kelly, Caroline Boyce, Anthony Nicoletta, and Mr. Park in the Dark.
Thank you so much. It really means a lot to tangle with these difficult subjects and know that there are so many of you out there who are grateful for this ability to have this dialogue. I thank you. I thank you so much. Next up question.
Okay, Linda. Well, there are several comments where in Debbie's testimony, several people in the comments recognize certain things that Debbie's experienced in their own lives, such as the balls of light that come into the room, right, and even the illustrations that were shown of the greys. One person has referenced, these look like the ones that come into my room. It goes on for one of the people who's commented saying that they walked into a strange vehicle in the Pennsylvania mountains when they were about 15, back in the 50s, lost 8 hours and went back home, not curious. Later, I read Missing Time and they're not curious anymore.
Well, I would like to hear you flesh out, if you can, those of you who have had missing time or abductions that you remember or beings that you remember. And the one, I think, important theme to try to dig deeper into is, for those of you who may have had telepathic information, do you also get going right to left, usually, sort of like a movie, a sequence of images, a little bit like a film and a little bit like fast snapshots. And sometimes there are gold symbols on top. And I'm always interested in learning if people are having that particular kind of mind download, because a lot of people that I've interviewed over the last 42 years, they have a sort of a sequence. And once you start hearing somebody describe what it is that they've been getting a download, then I have sort of different file areas with all of these people, over 2,000 that I've interviewed, that it provokes memory, and it provokes thoughts about who and what are connected and what are the themes that are coming to Homo sapiens sapien from Greys, reptilians, blonde Nordics, and any others. That there can be themes of content. And I'm really interested in this very difficult and transition time on Earth. What does seem to be current in the themes of telepathic download and imagery? So that's one thing, Ian, to put out to ask people if they can submit along those lines too.
Yes, we welcome any emails to earthfiles@earthfiles.com if anyone wants to send any summaries of those specific experiences.
With the movie-like or fast photos
Exactly.
with the symbols on top. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, going on to the questions, Linda. One of the questions is from someone who says that they've had several UFO sightings. Is it just that they are in the right place at the right time, or do you think that they were supposed to see them and that the people who witnessed the UFOs are supposed to see them?
Well, if you recall that part of the mini doc that we had today about Debbie, that was a very important exchange where she was saying that she and her mom doubted that everybody around them in Indianapolis saw what they saw. But then the question would be, why? And that comes up hundreds and hundreds of times. Something happens and it's dramatic and you can't find any other witness and there's nothing in the media. How does that happen? Well, I've been exposed to that idea for decades, that whatever the intelligence is in the craft, that it can do something that makes a very person-specific or a few people specific, like a bubble, and those are the ones that are going to see whatever is generated in the sky and wants them to see, but then nobody else will. And it's always been in the category of mind manipulation by either very skilled technology based on eons of research of us and experiment, or it is just part of the tools of an advanced civilization that has locations all over this universe, and that one of the ways that they move from place to place or experiment with their own planetary research is to be able to selectively control the consciousness in this consciousness field in the letter, control and manipulate a consciousness field around the individual or individuals that the others are studying. And then that also would maintain some control over whatever life forms that they are interested in investigating, because they may find that if they don't keep it isolated, then it might go to mass panic and all of these things, and that it would be the ability to control specific individual minds, eyes, senses, everything, would serve an advanced intelligences program on planetary evolution. So when you look at it from that point of view, it isn't that strange, because it would be technological. It would be a technological tool.
Okay, moving on to another question, Linda. Have you ever done any research into UFOs and the constant myths and mythology about the Earth, inner Earth, and inner Earth beliefs, such as Agartha?
Well, in terms of legends, no. I haven't studied legends, but I have had the 7-hour discussion with the analysts from the Defense Intelligence Agency who gave me an incredible geophysical description of what they understand about this big Earth and how there are these gigantic spaces way deep below the oceans, the basins of the oceans, meaning you would go down to the bottom, go through the bottom, you're no longer in water, and you would come out in huge cavernous places, and that the blonde Nordics especially, they like those kinds of spaces to base on a planet that they're investigating. The Greys like mountains, they like being inside of mountains, and that the reptilians like the heat of the desert. So if you ask these questions through the lens of if you were a geophysicist working for one of the extraterrestrial civilizations that I have no doubt exist, then you would have sort of an ABC list as you approached various planets, various moons, various bodies, that you would do technology to try to access what was inside of every planet and every moon, because all of it could be a sort of a contingent base that if you want to study that solar system and you want to do it safely and you don't want to alarm or interfere with whatever surface life might be there, then you want a place that's comfortable for you and you can operate from, and it's close to the system that you're studying, which is my understanding of how this planet that the non-humans have used inside the mountains, deep beneath the basins of the water, and inside of mountains in Mesopotamia, in which to base themselves while there's been interaction with the surface life of evolving humans. So in many ways, it's logical when you think about it. It's just that we have not been raised to think about Earth having huge spaces, because this is not the inner Earth legend. The inner Earth has the center of the Earth, but there is no possibility of that. At the center of this planet is a huge, hot, iron core, and it is 2/3 or 70% the diameter of our moon. That's what's at the center of our planet. These big spaces are between that region and coming up toward the surface. So the legends may have some link to the real communications about these kinds of basins that might have gone on, let's say 5,000 years ago, and we hear the legends and we're not getting the science. But I think the DIA guy, Ian, gave me science, even if we can't prove it.
Okay. Linda, do you think that these others are here to observe humans as we break through to the true nature of this universe? And are they assisting, or is there any malicious intent?
I was thinking the other day exactly along those lines, that if I were one of these advanced civilizations that was responsible for manipulating DNA and already evolving primates to create Homo sapien and Neanderthalensis before us and all these others, an experiment in organic consciousness, what would be the times that you would want to be back observing the whole system? It would be when you, being able to manipulate time, and that time and space don't have the meanings that we have. And when they talk about that you don't move through space, you move point to point in space, that being able to watch. I guess that's it. Watch and observe if your experiment is organic consciousness in a universe that may have been made, literally made, as an entire university or experimental ground. And we've talked about this before, that the part of us that we don't acknowledge as being real, but it may be the most real part of us, is the soul, because it is quantum energy that is tied into the quantum universe. And the quantum universe is projected like a 3D hologram from another universe or another dimension. There's got to be a reason. And in that letter, when he said, just know that the human race is moving on an evolutionary scale very quickly to understanding the phenomenon of higher dimensions and a conscious universe, and that the two are inseparable, and that previous statement was, if you could understand that truly you exist as part of this consciousness universal field, and that you are only the conscious intent that is you, what you emanate. If we were being educated about the true relationship between our mind, our soul, this universe, what the intent of love versus hate actually can do, why prayers would be a physics in a universe in which intent of all consciousness interacts with the huge quantum field, it would explain the ability to manifest from energy to matter, to manifest fish and bread on a hill. All of the things that we think of as being sort of fairy tales may actually be the most important processes created in this universe, being studied in this universe, and that we humans and other humanoids who have souls are the point of the experiment. And when I start thinking about everything around me in those terms, it changes. It definitely is changing the way I'm looking at a lot of things. And it makes me feel more effervescent, because it seems to me that if we all were sharing our consciousness in the idea of intent of love, light, and peace, it would be an effervescent atmosphere on this planet instead of everything dying. I'll go for effervescence. Okay, Ian, what else?
Okay, before we go into another question, I just want to reiterate, please, everyone, send in your video questions for Linda for our summer solstice celebration episode.
It's in 2 weeks, June
23rd. Okay, I've got another question for you, Linda. This one's probably quite a quick question. You often use the term high strangeness. Who coined the term high strangeness originally?
Well, I don't know. I've used it going all the way back to, I don't know, when I was working at Channel 7 in Denver, 79 to 80, when I was working on A Strange Harvest. I don't know the origin. It's just high strangeness is something that I used. I used it in a lot of things that I did, and it just stuck in my mind. So that's my source when I was working on that documentary.
Okay, I'm going to return now to questions about Skinwalker Ranch, which is a very popular series and which you've featured in. There are 2 questions on this, Linda. The first one, because I know you've had your own personal experiences here, there's some speculation, and we've actually had a comment previously from someone who says that they live quite near the area, but yet they've not experienced anything themselves. They actually say that they're a neighbour to Skinwalker Ranch. Now, their question was related to the speculation that some of this is the activity that's going on is actually a psychological experiment being done on certain people. But I know you've had your own personal experiences. What can you say about that?
Well, the Skinwalker Ranch in the Uinta Basin of Utah, it's very complex and complicated because you have to start out with the fact that for going back at least 3 centuries, 300 years, the Utes and the Navajos always have had, we'll call them alarms or warnings or stories about the fact that if you went into the Uinta Basin, the ranch is just 480 to 500 acres, a ranch in that huge Uinta Basin. And the Navajo and the Utes had stories about seeing a wolf change into a man or a man change into a wolf, the body changers, shape-shifting. And so we're going back 300 years. And that has always been one of the themes around the Uinta Basin. I remember when I was working on A Strange Harvest, and that was between September of 1979 and when it first broadcast on May 25th, 1980, 9-month project. I got a call from a man who lived in, I think it was Roosevelt, Utah. And he wanted me to know about the animal mutilations and the human abductions and the globes of light and the UFOs and all of this phenomena that were known to people who lived in the Uinta Basin. And I think, Ian, sort of what you're asking and is kind of a universal question. Which comes first in this chicken and egg question about, is the Uinta Basin a place of high strangeness for at least 300 years because there is a presence, a base of other intelligences that give off some kind of what I perceive as very negative energy there? I didn't like the feel there at all. Is it because there is other consciousness, just like this letter? And that consciousness is focused on manipulation of the environment in ways that are not positive? Why would the Ute and the Navajo have stories about seeing a wolf turn into a man or vice versa, going all the way back? And the same kind of thing happened when Terry Sherman moved his family onto that ranch back in around 1994. And that when I interviewed him for the first and only time in 1996, he was already at the end of his rope. It was the frustration in his voice and the fear of his family, of the red lights that were coming into the house and the kitchen and where they wanted to eat, and his wife would scream about get the red lights out of here. It was something they lived with and did not like. And the UFO activity and his running down one night after the red lights had come into the house, and his wife was just so upset and the kids were upset. And he grabbed one of his rifles that had a sighting telescope on and looked down from their house and could see some orangish triangles. And that's the night that, in his frustration and anger, and he ran down, he said he kept the gun with him, and he runs under what he could see through the scope was some kind of a huge craft. And the orange rectangles were like, it was orange on the inside and some kind of translucence, and he ran down and got under, and that's when he said he could see what he thought looked like 2 men, and that he gets telepathic communication somehow, right? Gets the idea that they're arguing, and that what they're arguing about is should they tell him, Terry Sherman, why they are there, what they are doing. And the part that he remembered and told me in the interview that I did for, I think it was Dreamland or Coast or both with Art Bell back in '96, is that he heard in his mind telepathically the words, "It won't do any good for us to try to explain to him what we are doing here." And that is as bottom line an answer to Skinwalker and the Uinta Basin in a way. But we humans have a hard time accepting or believing that something we can't see, hold, grab, tear, bite is real. The invisibility aspect of the intelligences that we are apparently dealing with, their skill with invisibility, their skill with the projection of three-dimensional holograms, that we cannot tell one of their projected trees from a real tree living here. I guess a lot of rejection sometimes is based on the concepts of those characteristics and technologies scare some people. But I have been by myself in so many rugged places, carrying formalin solution and a scalpel or scissors to collect tissue from mutilated animals. And I used to look up in the sky and think, boy, I am an easy target. If it's ETs that are mutilating these animals, wow, what do I do if? Well, I must have collected tissue for Dr. Altschuler, 30 animals over about 3 or some years, and I'm still here. And the animal mutilations are still on the planet everywhere. Human abductions go on all the time. The information that I'm gaining from people beyond this letter writer to this weekend is that there are small percentages of humans on Earth right now who are working in programs, as this man is describing. And they know that it is absolute physics, the relationship between the projection of this universe, like a technology that contains biological and AI consciousness, and that the consciousnesses in this universe, like the yin and the yang symbol, some are negative, some are what I'd call positive. The dark versus the light, they're juxtaposed right next to each other in this universe. And the only thing that makes the difference between how much black will be in this white, how much white will be in this black, is the intent of the consciousness of those that are in this universe with the ability to send out thought. The thought that dwells in the light. That is a major key. And on that note, I'm going to say big digital hug. I love you guys. And I'll see you next Wednesday. And send in your questions so Ian and all of us can get them organized for the June 23rd summer solstice celebration. We're getting up to 177,000, and our goal was originally 175. So we've gone through it, and in 2 more weeks, who knows where we will be. I love you for being there, and let's keep putting more white into the yin and yang symbol. See you next week.
Turn on closed captions for YouTube videos by clicking the white CC button on the lower right. The default language for Linda's videos is English. If you would like to see the captions in another language, click on the white Settings button next to the CC button. Select Subtitles CC,
I say, you want to get a comb?
and then select Auto Translate.
And I don't have to put them in
Select a language,
bind them anywhere. They love
and the captions will now appear in that language.
sort of gone through, and they will hold their heads. I never had a cat do that before. And they'll pull against the comb, helping me get out snarls. And I think it's the best they've ever been.